Hello, everyone. This is Gaurav Kapoor from Newristics, and welcome to Behavior Masterclass number 14. It's October 23rd. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, Behavior is a series of masterclasses once a month, specially designed to educate people on how to apply behavioral science to marketing and market research. Most of the content is tailored exclusively to the pharmaceutical industry, but we do use examples from every walk of life to illustrate applications of behavioral science in marketing. So we'll jump right in. The class is only 30 minutes, and we use a lot of examples to learn, and there's no Q&A in this class because there's a fair amount of content to be covered, so we'll just breeze through it. If you're new to behavioral science, the field of research that has now won multiple Nobel Prizes called behavioral science has helped us understand how human beings make decisions and as a result behave in real life using mental shortcuts that they accumulate and create over time as a result of all the experiences they have. And they use these mental shortcuts called heuristics to make decisions. Almost all the decisions they make, it's estimated it's over 90+% of the decisions we're making, whether they are very simple, mundane, everyday decisions, or they could be highly complex, once in a lifetime, life-changing type of decisions as well, and everything in between. We are using some kind of a mental shortcut or a heuristic to make the decision. Many of these shortcuts are also biases or cognitive errors that we somehow or the other believe that they work for us. They have helped us in the past to make a good decision, and we keep using them. So this science has huge applications in understanding your customers and also marketing to your customers based on what heuristics and biases they're using. And this masterclass is dedicated to helping you better understand how to use that in your disease state, on your brand, on your business, whatever business you might be supporting or working on. Every masterclass is structured the same way. We introduce two heuristics. There are hundreds of heuristics that have been discovered in academic and other research and have been named and described and studied in detail. We pick two at a time, and we introduce each heuristic. We use a lot of examples to understand how it affects decision-making. And then we get more specific about how to utilize that heuristic in the pharmaceutical industry, how it can affect decision-making of physicians or patients or payers, whatever examples we have chosen, and then how you can actually apply it to your brand. Our goal is, even in 30 minutes, to actually give you enough actionable learning that you can apply this science to some aspect of your brand almost immediately. So let's jump in. First heuristic of the day today is diffusion of responsibility. So let's first just learn what that is, and then we'll look at a lot of examples. Diffusion of responsibility means that when we are alone, not surrounded by a lot of people, not influenced or working with a lot of people, we tend to take more responsibility for whatever needs to get done. We will actually do it ourselves. But as soon as additional people start coming into the mix, we all start thinking somebody else has taken care of it or somebody else will take care of it. We don't check with each other. We assume, and we, in fact, oftentimes or sometimes drop the ball even. Something that we could have easily done ourselves, they could have easily done themselves, all of us could have done it, but what ends up happening is none of us actually do it. So this heuristic actually affects decision makings in many, many aspects of life, and it gets at how people tend to blame each other for what something they could and should have done on their own in the first place. So let's now look at some examples. We're going to take a long journey back in time, all the way up to today, literally September September of 2019. There you can find examples of diffusion of responsibility at any moment in time. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about how people just stood and watched, and while the leaders derided Jesus. If any of you are familiar with the infamous kind of case about how Kitty Genovese, this young woman, was brutally murdered in 1964 in front of what we believe were 30 plus almost 40 people, and nobody back then, there were no smartphones, they were not easy to contact, nobody called the police. And you would think now that kind of thing can never happen, right? Like, and things have improved a lot, obviously. Today, with phones and devices available, people have become vigilantes, and they're almost capturing crime in real time. And yet, only a few weeks ago, in national news, there were stories about how this young man who's a teenager was also killed in a fight among teenagers. And it's believed, again, 10, 15, 20 people actually watched it and even recorded it on their phone. Now, some of them did call the cops, and some of them did post the videos online, or like asked for help, but the young man did die. So these examples have been used in literature and in media and other places as examples of diffusion of responsibility. These are all very extreme examples, obviously, of involving death. But nevertheless, if you can argue that even in extreme examples like that, people can actually practice diffusion of responsibility, then in other circumstances in life where things are not even that critical, then how much more pronounced would it be? So let's take a look and see if it does creep into even less critical elements of our life. Let's look at some more examples. Just for we'll try to use some fun examples, some kind of out of the ordinary examples also. Everybody can recognize the artist as well as the song here probably. And this song and the lyrics, especially the chorus of this song, they are heavily based on diffusion responsibility. In this case, recognizing and fighting your own diffusion of responsibility, the awareness and consciousness that I'm gonna no longer expect that somebody else will do it, somebody else will take care of it. I'm gonna do it myself, and I'm gonna lead the way. So, and there are again examples of almost every successful leader in whatever field has shown traits like this, in that they just did what they thought was right, and other people simply start following them. So they were fighting their own diffusion of responsibility heuristic. Let's now get closer to home and look at some disease states in which, and then possibly even look at some marketing and messaging examples where diffusion of responsibility heuristic is coming into play. It's either influencing decision-making, or it's being used to influence decision-making. So if any of you have worked in multiple sclerosis category, maybe not so much today, because the category has changed quite a lot over the last decade or so with all the new therapies that have come in, biologics, et cetera. But for a very long time, probably over a decade, if not almost 20 years, what physicians would do when they diagnosed a patient with MS is to actually give the patient trial kits for 2 or 3 products that they mostly prescribed or used, and ask the patient to do research and read about the products, and talk to other people, etc., or talk to the nurse, the MS certified nurse in our office, or even to the physician, and then we'll together choose the best therapy for you, or i.e. wink wink, diffuse the responsibility of making a very complex, almost impossible decision of what therapy the patient should be on. Now, if you were to do IDIs with physicians, they'll try to rationalize their behavior by kind of using a logic like that goes something like this, that most of the therapies that are available today, they are the MOAs may be different, but they kind of sort of are comparable in how well or not so well they work. Almost none of them are disease modifying, at least, for a long time they weren't. And the thing that matters the most is not which therapy the patient is on, it's whether they actually stay on it or not. That's really much more important. And if I can get the patient to really make the decision themselves, then they are much more likely to stay on it. Sounds totally logical, whether it's true or not, i.e. whether there's data or not that shows that that if the patient makes the therapy choice themselves, they're more committed to it, or they are more, they're more adherent to it. There's really no necessary hard literature that they had actually bought into, but yet they were continuing to practice this way. And for many new therapies entering the market, it was almost a barrier to adoption. This way of decision making was, it was not facilitating easy consideration, or even if their therapy was actually better. In a different way, similar dynamic has also taken place in the HRT category, hormone replacement therapy. Now there, it's been more because of legal lawsuits and the news after 30, 40, whatever years of being utilized, that they have higher risk, they're associated with higher risk of ovarian cancers or breast cancers, and some of the kind of expensive lawsuits that were also settled. Physicians in that case, it's even more extreme in terms of diffusion of responsibility. The physician almost tries to talk the patient out of it, or really puts the entire burden of decision making on, if they're looking into HRT or talking to people, etc., on the patient, and almost wants to wash their hands off of it, of the decision process. Now let's look at some couple of examples of how diffusion of responsibility is being utilized, and we're going to show examples where there'll be diametrically opposite or different use of diffusion of responsibility heuristic in a marketing campaign, and how it's being used in messaging. So let me just play this one first, and then we'll talk about it.
I have cervical cancer from an infection. Human papillomavirus. Who knew HPV could lead to certain cancers? Who knew my risk for HPV would increase as I got older? Who knew that there was something that could have helped protect me from HPV when I was 11 or 12, way before I would even be exposed to it?
Did you know, Mom? Dad?
I was infected with HPV. Maybe my parents didn't know how widespread HPV is. While HPV clears up for most, that wasn't the case for me. Maybe they didn't know I would end up with cancer because of HPV. Maybe if they had known there was a vaccine to help protect me when I was 11 or 12, maybe my parents just didn't know.
All right, Mom? Dad?
What will you say? Don't wait. Talk to your child's doctor today. Learn more at hpv.com.
So one of the things that you have probably heard us use the term feed or fight the heuristics that are driving your customers or consumers' decisions. So through your marketing, through your messaging efforts, you want to either feed or fight the heuristic. So in this case, diffusion of responsibility on behalf of the parent, the messaging is actually fighting that heuristic. And it's using the child in a very interesting way, almost, like making the parent feel guilty, so guilty like that they have to pay attention to the message type of approach or strategy. So it's a very kind of intense use of diffusion of responsibility heuristic in advertising. Now let's look at a very different use of this, the same exact heuristic in a different disease state and from a very different angle.
Caring for someone with Alzheimer's means I am a lot of things. I am his sunshine. I am his advocate. So I asked about adding once daily Namenda XR to his current treatment for moderate to severe Alzheimer's. It works differently. When added to another Alzheimer's treatment like Aricept, it may improve overall function and cognition and may slow the worsening of symptoms for a while.
Namenda XR doesn't change how the disease progresses. It shouldn't be taken by anyone allergic to memantine or who's had a bad reaction to Namenda XR or its ingredients. Before starting treatment, tell their doctor if they have or ever had a seizure disorder, difficulty passing urine, liver, kidney, or bladder problems, and about medications they're taking. Certain medications, changes in diet, or medical conditions may affect the amount of Namenda XR in the body and may increase side effects. The most common side effects are headache, diarrhea, and dizziness.
He's always been my everything. Now I am giving back. Ask their doctor about adding once daily Namenda XR.
So in this case, conditions like Alzheimer's that can have a very high degree of caregiver burden can lead to dynamics in a household, in a family, in terms of who is taking the lead on, providing the care between the spouses or the siblings or extended family, friends, neighbors, etc. And can lead to many kind of problematic arguments and situations in families where they can't come to agreement, or they're not easily able to agree or reconcile how they're going to manage or provide care. And in this case, the commercial, and you see lots of caregiver burden type of messages targeted to physicians, maybe not so much to patients. But this is the exact opposite. It's almost where the patient is being praised, is being shown in a very positive light on not diffusing responsibility, doing the exact opposite of owning it, right? So much so that they're the ones who are asking for Namenda. They're the ones who are going out of their way and almost enjoying the process of providing care as much as possible. So very different, interesting use of the same heuristic, but from a very opposite angle. Without really, if they had shown situations where family members are not taking care of the patient, and because of diffusion responsibility, that'd be a very negative type of ad and probably not very effective. So this is a diametrically opposite use of the same heuristic, but very interesting. All right, so we're going to jump into the second heuristic of the day. This heuristic is called Endowment Effect. So same drill. Let's first introduce what Endowment Effect is to better understand, to understand it, and then again we'll look at lots of examples. So what is Endowment Effect? It is an effect that if you think you own something, or you actually do own it, you're endowed with it, you have it, you will now suddenly put more value on it than you should. And this effect can manifest itself in a variety of ways. You will put more value on it than other people do. You would also put more value on whatever that thing is than you put on something else that you don't own. So simply because you own this, you own X, you value it more than Y, which you actually don't own. And the reality may be you should do the exact opposite. Y is actually something much more valuable, and it is what you should be going after, or what you should have instead of X, but you do the opposite. And then finally, as a marketer, because this is an effect, you can either, again, think about feed or fight. You can create this effect as much as you may have to fight it and deal with it if it's already existent. But if not, you can also create it for yourself by, if you endow people, your customers, with something up front. It's either actual physically you endow them with something, or it's the feeling that they own it or they have it. That makes them want to value it more and either want to get it or work hard to keep it. So let's look at examples of how endowment effect affects decision making and how it can be used in marketing. Here's a funny commercial. It's actually not even in English. And since I don't speak Spanish, so but you can pretty much tell what's happening in the commercial, even though you can't hear the voiceover or you can't understand the voiceover. So let me play this first.
You should really let go of your last earthly possession.
It's time to snap, post, chat, and sell. It's time to let go.
Oh, actually, it translated. It was when I downloaded it, it was in Spanish. But anyway, so you get the point. This company, Let Go, if you've seen commercials of this on TV or you've just come across this, the entire business is based on endowment effect heuristic. So one of the ways endowment effect affects your decision making is to make you hoard things that you should have let go long time ago. Simply because you own it, you value it more than it's really worth. This is one of the reasons why people are never happy selling any of their used items, whether it's a used car or things at their garage sale or whatever it is. They just are always thinking that it's worth more than anybody else, what they are thinking. Let's look at other. Endowment, this is a little less relevant to the pharmaceutical industry just because promotions are not as big a part of the industry, but in many other industries that are either literally reliant on promotions to drive revenue, or they definitely do use promotions occasionally or more than occasionally. This is a good example of a promotion that the perceived value of the promotion is amplified because of the way it uses endowment effect heuristic and how the promotion is presented to the consumer. This is the single most effective promotion Starbucks has ever run, so much so that they ran it on and off for years, which in the world of food service, you almost never do. You never really have, you're always refreshing your promotions with something new, something different, something better. You rarely rerun it, and you certainly don't run it so often. And the promotion was, you go to Starbucks in the morning, whatever you buy, they give you a receipt. On the bottom of the receipt, it says like after 2 p.m., if you come back to Starbucks, you can get a grande cold beverage for just $2. And so if you do the math, if you just, we don't know the exact numbers, what what people actually spend, but just using some very back of the envelope type of assumptions, you can back into that the actual discount here that they're offering to customers is not as high as it seems like. That the offer sounds much more attractive. And when they ran it, and especially in metro cities where people are working in a building where the Starbucks is right downstairs or something like that, people would actually say, "Oh man, I forgot to go down and get my free drink." They actually refer to it as a free drink, although it's not really free. And so another way to think about this is, if Starbucks was to run a print ad or a TV ad or any kind of like communication that come to Starbucks twice in one day and get 20% off your total spend, who is going to go and take advantage of that promotion? Like nobody, right? Like very few people would be. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? I have better uses of my time. So it's all in how the use of endowment effect is making people value, because they already own the offer. The receipt has been handed to them. It's in their pocket. And if they don't use it, they lose it. And so this is actually, for those of you who are familiar with loss aversion heuristic, it's one of the most commonly kind of, referred to heuristic in media or in articles, etc. Endowment effect is actually nothing but artificially created loss aversion. So you already are averse to losing what you have, so much so that you're willing to pass on something better because the fear of losing what you have in the process of getting something better is not a trade-off that you like. Now you can actually create artificially induced loss aversion in people by endowing them with something up front, and now they don't want to lose that. Or the flip side is they value it more than it's really worth. So loss aversion and endowment effect are very connected heuristics. You know, if you're familiar with loss aversion, you will now appreciate endowment effect in a new light. Let's take some more examples. We're going to get, as usual, we get closer to healthcare and pharma. So here's a very interesting example of the use of endowment effect heuristic in the pharmacy benefits management category or pharmacy category. If you think about if you are taking any kind of medication, chronic or acute, with a certain frequency that you are on it every day or whatever that frequency is, you should be using mail order pharmacy, not a retail pharmacy for your medication. Why? And this is one of those value propositions that one could, on paper, literally say that it's a no-brainer, right? Why? Because I can give you so many reasons for why you should do this. You know, like, why wouldn't everyone convert or switch? It's cheaper, it's more convenient, it's more reliable, it's more accurate, it's more confidential. Every which way you can look at it, it's actually a better deal. And yet, millions of people, and as a percentage, a very large percentage of people who are, who are and should be using mail order pharmacy instead of retail pharmacy, don't switch or still have not switched. So if you are a large PBM and you are literally responsible for reducing pharmacy utilization costs for your clients, how do you get more people to switch? So endowment effect heuristic can be utilized effectively to message to people. This is an example of an actual direct mail piece, that if you say to people, you already have this and you're not using it, so you already have access to a pharmacy plus program that gives you additional benefits that are described on the left-hand side, including the low cost, et cetera, and the implication being, so i.e. inducing the endowment effect, right? I.e. you already have it, making you realize that you don't want to lose it, or in this case, you want to use it. Because by not using it, you are by default losing it. And so this is an example of how messaging can be crafted based on that heuristic to get people to pay more attention to the same. I mean, this is a topic that the PBMs message to or have been messaging to for forever, and yet they have lower conversion rates than they want. This messaging was, in this case, we actually have data to share. It's actually incredibly successful, both in market research and in market. There was, so if you look here on the right-hand side, this is the control cell, and we're looking at two metrics: actual conversion rates, opportunity conversion rates. I'm not going to describe, go into detail of everything here, but if you compare any set of bars to the last set of bars, this is how big of a difference it was. So, and these are direct mail response rates. So having a direct mail response rate of 17% is almost crazy. It's unheard of to have that kind of response rate in direct mail. It's more like this is what's normal. So, and this is by segment for different segments of patients. So across the board, irrespective of what segment, irrespective of almost which metric you look at, whether you look at the blue bars, compare the blue bar to the blue bar here, or yellow to yellow, there was very significant increase. Quite heavily driven by endowment effect, use of endowment effect heuristic in the messaging. Here's another example. This is also health related, but a different, it's not medication or pharmacy, it's wellness programs. And if any of you are familiar with the Silver Sneakers program, one of their biggest challenges is that Silver Sneakers is through many leading Medicare or Medicare Advantage programs, patients or people, seniors already have paid access to the Silver Sneakers program. It's part of their plan. but they don't use it. So how do you get them to utilize the program, which basically keeps them healthier, reduces the healthcare costs, which is why the insurance company included it as part of your plan in the first place. It reduces, hospitalizations related to slips and falls, and so many benefits. And it's a unique program, very kind of differentiated in that there's really nothing else like it, and it's available in tens of thousands, like 10, 20,000 places around the country. So using endowment effect heuristic to get people to realize you already have this and you're not using it, i.e. you are losing it, is one way to remind. And in this one, it's not as hard hitting based on the copy that you see here as it could be. You can push on the endowment effect, as far as you'd like. And here's the last example. This is now actual pharmaceutical. Copay cards is an area where endowment effect heuristic can be utilized effectively. Emgality is a new migraine prevention medication. And, almost everybody has somewhat similar, messaging for their copay cards, but this is one of the areas where you can use endowment effect heuristic quite effectively to get people to feel they already have this, and if they're not using it, they're going to lose it, and that's something they wouldn't want. So some ideas for how to utilize this heuristic. So we're at 2:30. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hopefully you learned something new with diffusion of responsibility and endowment effect. We'll see you next month.